first, it was a late model Camaro we supercharged for big horsepower.
Got a powerful Camaro.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
Then a new Dodge Challenger that got a turbo kit.
Gentlemen, that's some horsepower and torque, I tell you.
I think we're there. The horsepower wars are on again, and it's the 70s all over again.
On today's horsepower, it's Ford's turn for some new modern muscle. It looks like a Roush Mustang, but it doesn't perform like one yet, that is. You see, it's actually a stock 2010 GT work in progress.
The look comes from the race-inspired convertible stripe kit and the body kit you can add to any stock pony, from the front fascia to the rear spoiler. The rear valance, front splitter, and side splitters are an unpainted grain texture that matches the stock rocker panels and will resist chips from rocks. It's got a slew of inside add-ons too: padded light bar, signature seats, gauge cluster, even Roush pedals and door sills.
To complete the transformation, feast your eyes on this, a black chrome powder-coated Roush Charger, originally designed for limited edition cars, now available in kits for 05 2010 models. Now you can still get the standard black version, of course, but either way, with the intercooler, heat exchanger, and all the other components, you'll be given your 4.6-liter Mustang motor, 435 horsepower, 400 foot-pounds of torque. To complement that, we got a complete Roush suspension kit with the same good stuff they use in the 427R. Now the idea is to give you superior handling without giving up ride quality. Well, there's even more involved in this stock to Roush redo, but time to quit talking and start working. Before the kit goes on, a few things have to come off, like the front fascia and the upper airbox tube and lid. After draining the coolant, the throttle body comes off, but make sure to keep the gasket. We disconnect the fuel line and remove the stock fuel rail assembly, then the manifold and the alternator.
Plus, this heater tube assembly, which has to be modified by first removing the water restrictor, then by separating the metal tubes.
We also have to modify the airbox by removing the harness and then cutting off the end of this clip for some clearance later. Back under the hood, we can reconnect all the heater hoses and now begin putting on some new parts, starting with this new heavy-duty belt tensioner and the intake manifold with air-to-water intercooler.
When the Supercharger gets installed, it relocates the throttle body and a couple other sensors. So what we're going to do is peel back a couple of the wires in the main engine harness, but don't get turned off by it. There's no cutting or splicing. Everything remains plug and play. While removing the loom, be careful not to cut through your finger or any of the wires shielding. The point of this is to relocate a sensor.
Now connect the in and out intercooler water hoses to the back of the manifold. And after connecting a vacuum line for the boost gauge and fuel pressure regulator, we can install the new fuel rails loaded with Roush's 38-pound high-flow injectors. With the harness position, we can reinstall the thermostat and water neck. Now we can drop in the centerpiece of this kit, the M90 Root-style Supercharger unit with that cool chrome finish. Next, we're using the factory gasket. It's time to bolt up the stock throttle body. A new alternator bracket goes on, followed by the two new idler pulleys. Then after removing the ears from the alternator for clearance, we can install it in the new position. Then route the new serpentine belt. The heat exchanger installs in the usual spot in front of the radiator, but Roush has relocated the pump position in front of it on a bracket for a quick install. Then one hose connects the pump to the heat exchanger, and another connects the pump to the degas bottle that mounts to the radiator shroud. Now we reconnect the radiator hose to the water neck to complete the plumbing. After bolting the airbox back in place, we can install the new air tube assembly, connect it to the throttle body, and make all the connections. Well, here's the last step in our installation, which for you ought to be the first. You see, you have to send your stock PCM to Roush. They'll calibrate it and overnight it back to you by the time you're ready to install it.
The install went super smooth. Now for you novice mechanics, this will take you about a weekend in your driveway. Now in the 5-speed version, this thing actually puts out less emissions than a bone stock GT. As far as fuel consumption goes, that depends how much you can keep your foot out of the pedal. Joe, you clear?
Oh yeah, I can't wait to get this thing on the dyno, but not yet. You see, we got more in store for this supercharged Mustang after the break. You don't need to go anywhere. Not to the kitchen, not to the bathroom. Come on, you can hold it. Be a man. Today, horsepower is transforming this 2010 GT into a Roush performance car. We just installed one of their water-to-air superchargers with its chrome root-style blower. It's an upgrade that should up the horsepower 135 over stock.
To complete the conversion though, we're also going to make it breathe, handle, and brake like a real Roush car. That means first removing the front brake caliper, then removing the rotor, the dust plate, and sway bar end link. Then we can unbolt the strut from the tower. Before we pull the strut out, here's a little safety tip I want to show you that may end up saving you a finger in the long run. This tab is captured on the nut to aid in tightening and loosening the bolt. Now a lot of people will put their finger there, hit it with the impact, and this is what happens. Remember, you've been warned. Now we can lower the floor jack to remove the strut and spring. After that, the stock sway bar can go.
The new suspension we're putting on has a 1G skid pad rating, and here's one reason why. The stock sway bar looks almost as thick as the Roush, but the big difference is the fact that stock sway bars are hollow. This thing is heavy, solid, and 45% stronger. The struts are also a more heavy-duty construction with springs that are thicker, more tightly wound, and designed to lower the car about 1 inch. The new sway bar goes up in place first, then the strut and spring assembly, and the dust shield. Then separate the caliper brake line from the factory hard line, and be sure to cap the hard line. Next, the kit's caliper bracket goes on, followed by the new 14-inch slotted rotor. Now we can install the new 4-piston front caliper. Finally, connect the new line to the stock hard line to finish the front setup.
Now it's time to get started on the rear suspension to match all the cool components we put up front. Now this is Roush's anti-wheel hop kit, which is also known as a rear upper trailing arm. It's designed to help eliminate wheel hop during hard acceleration when planting the tire to the ground is an issue. Now along with that goes their springs and rear shocks, which are specifically designed for this whole suspension kit. It comes with the rear sway bar, and the rear brakes, we're not upgrading in size, but we are going to go ahead and step up to a slotted rotor to help improve the rear braking. And along with it comes a stock caliper painted red to match the front. Now to get started, we need to remove some rear bracing from the car. Then we can remove the stock rear sway bar and unbolt the shocks. Next, we need to lower the rear end a few inches so we can remove the springs. For the trailing arm swap, we have to lower the fuel tank to create a little clearance. Then after securing the rear end, we can remove all the trailing arm bolts but one. In order to access it, we have to remove the back seat bottom. Then the stock piece can come out and we can bolt the new one into place.
While we're down here, it's a good time to replace the stock bump stops with the stiffer new ones from our kit. Next, we can free up the shocks for removal and bolt up the new ones. Then with the car back up and rear supported, new springs go in, shocks get bolted up, and the trailing arms are attached to the rear end. Final step in our rear suspension upgrade is this new stiffer rear sway bar. Then it's on with the new slotted rotors and the red calipers.
Okay.
Now we can bleed the brakes before our next upgrade, which is a high-performance exhaust system that first bolts up to the factory mid-pipe, followed by a tailpipe and a polished end tip. Plus, Roush claims more horsepower and fuel economy. And the sound? Well, anytime you go from this to this, you don't need eagle eyes to see that baffling material's not going to hold back much of the roar. Well, that sound speaks for itself. After a couple more mods, we'll be ready to make more noise on the dyno. Coming right up. Horsepower is turning a stock GT pony into a Roush road beast today with the root-style Supercharger for power, high-performance suspension for road race handling, and new beefier brakes for superior stopping. No stopping us, though, till we make the complete transformation. A true performance shifter behind all those upgrades is something you're going to notice every time you get in the car. Now, while the stocker here is pretty good, there's always room for improvement when it comes to quicker, more positive shifts. With the knob removed, we have to loosen the console to disconnect 3 electrical connectors. Then we need to free up this harness retainer and remove the foam insulating pad. Finally, the shifter grommet comes out. Underneath, the disconnected shifter comes out a lot easier if you also unbolt the drive shaft. Here's a good way to see up close the advantages of a short throw shifter. First, the stock shifter has a pivot point that's pretty low. There's only a short amount of rod on bottom, requiring more distance on top to shift gears. Now with the Roush piece, much higher pivot point, much more material down below, and only a short distance needed to bang those gears. We need to transfer 2 nylon bushings from the stock shifter to the new one, along with 2 rubber insulators. Then the new shifter can go back in place from under the car, and after installing a new taller boot, we can bolt up this new retro style shifter handle, then put the console back in place and reinstall the knob. For the finishing touches today, 4 new 18-inch chrome-plated cast aluminum wheels wrapped in Cooper Zeon rubber.
There it goes.
Well, that's it for the Roush makeover. Now at last we can see what we got from our horsepower upgrades, that new Roush Charger, and the high-performance exhaust system. While 2010 stock GTs make about 315 horses at the flywheel, that translates to about 272 at the rear wheels. We'll consider that our baseline.
While all of our runs were really consistent, within a horsepower of each other, we ended up making 378, which is a 106 horsepower gain at the rear tires.
So in terms of power, our stock GT to Roush conversion is a success. Hey, but what about the handling and braking? Well, for that, the only proof is out on the pavement. So we'll be right back.
Let's get this thing unhooked.
All right.
You're watching Horsepower. For a DVD copy of this episode, just go to PowerBlockTV.com and order your copy for just $5.95 plus shipping and handling. Start your own Horsepower collection, delivered right to your door from the PowerBlock.
We're back, and we know how much power this Roush Mustang makes on the dyno. But what about how it handles? For that, we turn to our good pals in the Franklin Police Department. Their EVOC training course is the perfect spot to run it through its paces. You may have the right to remain silent, but I was there to disturb the peace. First stop, the slalom course. We had the cones set up pretty close and passed through them at 45 miles an hour. The steering response, lack of body roll, and spot-on shock valving made it an easy chore for the Stage 3. I've driven a lot of Mustangs in my day, and I'll tell you what, this is night and day from a stock GT. The engineers at Roush really did a good job on this car. Hell, I've even been in some race cars that haven't handled this good. I didn't want to hog all the action, so we let the instructors take a shot at it.
When we're training our officers on our EVOC course, we're using these Crown Vics out here, and they don't handle nowhere near as good as this car does. There's no problems at all. The braking's there, the steering's there, hardly any body roll. Great car, great car.
It's all about the driver. The car can do it if the driver and operator can do it. It's such a flat, performing vehicle as far as suspension goes. The engine and supercharger kicks in. It's just a well-performing vehicle. I would enjoy if Roush could make a police package for my Crown Vic, so if you could do that for me, that'd be great. I appreciate that.
All right, right now we're gonna do a 60-0 brake. See how good this thing stops. Not too shabby. A stock GT has a stopping distance of 107 feet. Let's see what we got. 98 feet and 4 inches, about 10 feet shorter. All right, you can run the cones all day long, do as many brake tests as you want, but the real test is out on the course. I've got a cop car chasing me from behind, so we're gonna see how good this Mustang will run away from him. The overall stability of the car is just amazing. No body roll. You put it on the path you want it, and it's staying there. In a car this comfortable, it's hard to believe it can carve the corners so well. It can definitely outrun the police cruiser, but like the old saying goes, you can't outrun the radio. Absolutely no brake fade, and I am putting these things through some heat right now. Delay, and then throttle starts to pick back up. Traction control is off, so that's not a factor. That delay. All right, cop car's about 100 yards in front of me. He started out almost on my rear bumper, and we are moving in on him quick. That's 5 laps, and we're caught up to him already. That is pretty impressive. The end. Woo, that's fun. That is fun. Running from a cop with his lights on. Don't try that at home. Man, that was awesome. I can't thank you enough.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for inviting Franklin out.
Yeah.
We had a blast, man. You did a good job. That car's amazing.
You guys did a good job driving. Now, since you couldn't catch me, I guess I got to see how tight the back
Check
of
it
these
out
things
for me
really
if you don't
are.
mind. Be a lot of fun there.
All right.
Not too bad, huh?
Well, I was with the... Hey!
Let's get it.
Hey! There's no insurance or tax. What are they doing? Can't trust anybody these days.